We hope you enjoy our stories and carefully selected images from interesting people and times gone by. Welcome to Stories About Dead Guys. Amid the rugged and bleak landscape of the New South Wales goldfields, gold miners take a break from their relentless toil. The windlass creaks as the men pose for the camera, grateful for the short rest, but at the same time apprehensive to get back to work again in anticipation of making their fortune. A gold miner pushes a wheelbarrow loaded with all of his belongings, everything he has in the world, along a dusty Western Australian track in search of work. It might seem strange, but sights like this were commonplace once upon a time in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Who was this bloke? Well, that's a difficult question we probably will never be able to answer. For now, he's just another soul who unfortunately has faded from public memory. Anyone that's ever spent a day collecting straw or hay will know the back-breaking work that's involved in the job. This photo was taken a little before 1901 and is one of the very first photos to be taken of men working the Aussie country. Of course, with modern mechanisation, the process is far easier, but the men here wouldn't care. They're just getting on with the job. Look at the sheer determination on their faces, with leathery hands and sun-bronzed arms, and not even a pair of gloves to be seen anywhere. It's 1880, and two little Indigenous Australian boys have been patiently waiting for their fathers to finish work for the day shearing sheep, trying to entertain themselves. So it's time for some fun riding around on one of the woolly customers before she gets a haircut. Although not very well off, the boys are having fun. And the sheep doesn't look bothered one bit either. No doubt it was bored waiting for its turn on the shears. There's nothing quite like an angry kangaroo. Although this 1924 photograph was taken in Germany during a sparring session, you'll notice that one of the contestants is undisputably Australian. Kangaroos have a fearsome reputation for kicking and have been known to cause horrific injuries and deaths, so you'd have to be a bit crazy to try and box one. They are more than equipped with powerful leg muscles and toenails that can easily rip open a person's abdomen. Did the guy fighting this kangaroo escape being kicked and injured? Who knows? Put simply, the Australian Swagman was a traveller. He was a hobo, an itinerant worker who wanted nothing more than the freedom to travel on bush highways and byways in search of work and a feed. Swaggies would mostly stick to predefined routes or circuits, calling in to friendly homesteaders in search of work in exchange for a meal. They were usually well-kept, proud and resourceful. They asked for little in life and were distinctly non-materialistic. Take this chap who lived in a tree hollow with Aussie brush-tail possums and cockatoos as his neighbours. Decorated with the limited trappings of his meagre yet happy existence here, he sits on his makeshift furniture, with his favourite photos proudly displayed around his home. With rolled-up strip of leather for a door, bedroll laid out and axe sharpened at the ready in anticipation of a roaring fire to help keep the chill from his bones during another long night in the bush. Here's another old swaggy at the end of the 1800s as he travels along with nothing but the sound of the wind in the eucalypt trees to accompany him on his journey. He has little by way of fancy trappings, but just like our friend from the previous shot, this old fella takes pride in being as free as a bird and answerable to nobody. To him, he has everything he needs in life, aside from his next feed. God bless him and all the other long-gone swaggies just like him, wherever they now lie in peaceful rest in the Aussie bush. This leads us to our second group of gold miners. Rather than underground mining, this time we see men panning for the beautiful yellow stuff in a flowing river in a New South Wales goldfield in 1900. The idea was to pan for traces of gold and then follow the trail back to its source, a process easier said than done. Some miners made incredible wealth, whilst the vast majority made just enough to get by. But regardless, most gold miners remained eternally optimistic that they too would someday strike it rich. It's around 1900 and this family teams up to pack away a sunshine combine harvester after harvesting their wheat crop. The sunshine harvester was an Australian invention which made life a heck of a lot easier for our earlier wheat farmers. It sure beat cutting and collecting wheat by hand. This machine was a state-of-the-art invention back in the day. Now though, looking backwards through time, it's just another piece of Aussie ingenuity relegated to the history books. It's 1916 in Westbury, Tasmania. Friends and family gather at the local railway station to farewell local lads going off to war. The air was charged with emotion. Anxious mothers had no idea whether they would ever see their sons again. And their sons, the soldiers you see here, just like a lot of young people of their generation going to war, anticipated the excitement and adventure of travelling to far-off places they might never otherwise have seen. Osmiridium is an extremely rare metal, a natural alloy of osmium and iridium, with some other precious metals thrown in. It's really hard and highly resistant to corrosion. Gold prospectors in Tasmania in the 1800s onwards commonly discarded the heavy pesky material from their gold pans because it was considered worthless. In fact, the gold buyers they dealt with would penalise them if their gold parcels contained any osmiridium. When a market was first discovered for osmiridium in the production of durable fountain pen tips, Tasmania went on to be the world's #1 producer of the highest quality osmiridium. It was also used to harden steel and in munitions, although with the advent of stainless steels, it largely became obsolete. However, it's still used today for some applications requiring extreme durability. This rare photo features Osmiridium miners in their rustic but cosy cabin in the bush in Adamsfield, Tasmania. If you're a movie buff, you'll no doubt have heard of Errol Flynn, who was born in southern Tasmania in 1909 and lived in a suburb of Hobart called Sandy Bay, a mere 15 minutes drive away from me right now. Flynn was a massive star of such movies as The Adventures of Robin Hood, Captain Blood, Seahawk, and many others. He was regarded as something of a playboy and bad boy, a ladies' man through and through, and like many actors of his era, he was somewhat subject to controversy. Here's a childhood shot of him in Hobart in 1918, together with celebrity socialite Dame Enid Lyons, at a local fundraising event to help raise money for returned soldiers during World War I. He's dressed as a page boy, possibly his first acting role before launching into international stardom. Flynn's family were, as he called them, seafaring folk, and it's been suggested that his family's close bond with the ocean attracted and inspired him in his various swashbuckling roles. Flynn claimed that he was descendant from the crew involved in the Bounty Mutiny, but this has never really been properly substantiated. Regardless, he was the Hollywood heartthrob of his era, and when he unexpectedly died in Vancouver in 1959 at just 50 years old, people all over the world mourned for him. Have you heard about Tasmania's infamous Isle of the Dead? It's a little island around 1 hectare or 2.4 acres in size, located just off the mainland of the main Port Arthur prison. It was Port Arthur's cemetery. Between 1833 and 1877, it became the final resting place to over 1,000, some say as many as 1,500 or so, convicts, free settlers, redcoat soldiers, paupers, lunatics, and officials. Having visited this place a couple of times in guided tours, I feel it really does have a rich and fascinating history. It has a certain energy, in my opinion, that is worthy of further thought and investigation. Many convicts are buried there in unmarked graves, while of course the more important, well-to-do people have the relative luxury of a headstone. One tour guide told us a story of one particular grave digger that lived and worked there, managing the graves. According to what we were told that day, although the man was relatively self-sufficient, living in his little hut amidst death and solitude, he completely refused to grow fruit and vegetables on the island, stating he did not want to eat the produce of the dead. If you ever come to Tasmania, be sure to visit and experience this amazing and important piece of Australian history for yourself.